I never thought I'd find myself sobbing over a $15 inhaler. But last night, there I was, collapsed on the kitchen floor, prescription for my son still in hand, overwhelmed by a wave of helplessness. Even a sudden winter breeze could land my son in the emergency room. And if I couldn't scrape together enough money for his medication, that scenario might become reality this very week. Sometimes I wonder, was it a mistake to try motherhood like this? Alone, quietly, slowly wearing myself out? My name is Sarah Bennett. I'm 31 years old, a single mother to Noah, a 7-year-old boy with big brown eyes and weak lungs that have kept me on constant alert 24/7 for years. Noah's father left when he was just 2, claiming he needed a fresh start in Arizona, and then disappeared, leaving behind a box of toys, a few empty promises, and child support payments barely enough to cover half a month's asthma medication. I work an administrative job at a small law office outside Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It's not my dream job, but it pays the rent for our 1-bedroom apartment, lets Noah attend the nearby public elementary school, and covers basic necessities as long as I meticulously budget every cent. Eating out or traveling is an unreachable luxury. Buying coffee each morning? Forget it. I've learned to brew cheap instant coffee, drinking it from an old ceramic mug I've had since college. I'm trying to get promoted to executive assistant, not because I crave prestige. I don't need people to praise me as successful, but because a higher salary might finally ease the constant anxiety that grips me every time. Noah coughs at night. I've worked overtime for 3 straight months, accepted every project others refused, and willingly spent weekends at the office. My supervisor, Sharon, once hinted I was the top candidate for the next promotion, but I know that just one small misstep could erase that opportunity forever. And for me, opportunities don't come knocking twice. I don't have a built-in babysitter. I don't have grandparents nearby to lend a hand. I don't have a boyfriend to share the burden. There's just me and Noah. Noah's asthma isn't severe enough to be life-threatening, but it's bad enough to make my heart jump every time I hear his wheezing. He seems more aware of our situation than most kids his age, diligently carrying his inhaler in his backpack and expertly operating the nebulizer whenever needed. But there are nights when, despite his medication, Noah still struggles to sleep because of chest tightness. And me? I just sit beside him watching the clock, counting every breath. Medication costs keep rising. Recently, the new inhaler Noah's doctor prescribed costs nearly $180 per vial, and my insurance won't fully cover it. I had to ask the doctor for a cheaper alternative, even though I know it isn't as effective. Leaving the pharmacy, I clutched the bill with trembling hands, wondering if I could even make it through this month. I know some people might say, why don't you ask your parents for help? But it's not that simple. My parents live just a 30-minute drive away in a 2-story home with a backyard and 2 dogs. They vacation every season, dine out at least 3 times a week, and regularly post photos of weekend cocktail parties. They're not poor, but they've always viewed my life as a result of my poor choices. They never say it directly, but in my mother's eyes, I see the clear message: you chose to be a single mom. Now deal with it. Yet sometimes, when Noah runs a high fever and I'm up all night monitoring his asthma, I still call my mom. I hate begging, but my son needs care. I need someone to be there so I can go to work, keep my job, hold on to my chance at a promotion. I tell myself, just this one time. It'll be okay afterward. But just this one time keeps happening again and again. And the most recent incident was the moment I finally understood. Some loved ones are there only when they need you, not when you need them. I don't know where things will end up, but I know one thing for sure. If I fall, there won't be anyone reaching out to catch me. And if that makes me cold, it's not because I want to be, but because I have no choice. I got the email Monday morning. The subject line flashed clearly on the screen: interview confirmation, executive assistant position. Immediately, my heart raced. I had to read it 3 times before I believed that, After all my efforts, I finally had the chance to climb one step higher, possibly a turning point that could change life for Noah and me. The interview was scheduled for 2 p.m. on Friday, lasting about 45 minutes. It was perfect timing. Noah would be at school, and I could take a short break, returning to work by 4:05. I prepared everything, updated my resume, picked out a pale blue shirt and a classic black skirt, and practiced mock questions every evening after Noah fell asleep. I'd never felt so determined. If I passed this round, my salary would increase by $7,000 per year, enough that I wouldn't need to count every dollar at the grocery store or ask the doctor to prescribe cheaper medication for Noah. But fate seems to love mocking those who dare to hope for something better. Wednesday evening, while I was folding laundry, I heard Noah coughing from his bedroom. Not a mild cough from a cold or slight flu. It was a deep, dry, desperate cough, as if someone were slowly squeezing his throat. I rushed into the room to find Noah with red-rimmed eyes and a face drenched in sweat. He was fighting for air, each breath sounding painfully wheezy. I didn't need a doctor to tell me what was happening. Another asthma attack. I'd faced this many times, but it still made my heart clench every time. I set up the nebulizer, sitting next to him all night, carefully counting his breaths. The next morning, Noah's fever spiked to 101.8. The pediatrician confirmed exactly what I'd suspected, an acute asthma episode combined with a mild infection. He prescribed steroids and ordered Noah to rest at least 48 hours, avoiding all triggers. No school, no going out, and certainly don't leave him alone, he stated firmly. I nodded, though I knew exactly what that meant for my interview on Friday. The moment I got Noah home and gave him his medication, I grabbed my phone. I just needed 2 hours Friday afternoon, not the whole day, not the weekend, just 2 hours. I called my mom. She answered after the fourth ring, sounding rushed. Mom, Noah's having an asthma attack and running a high fever. I can't send him to school on Friday. Can you come over and watch him for just 2 hours? I have a very important interview. There was a silence on the other end, so long I had to check if the call had disconnected. Then my mother spoke, her voice soft as a whisper but cold as ice. Oh, Sarah, Friday's busy for me. I have a hair appointment in the morning, and your dad and I have the Hendersons' anniversary party in the afternoon. My schedule's been set all week. You know that. Mom, just 2 hours. I've already taken the day off. I just need exactly those 2 hours. I'll have everything ready. Noah just needs to rest. All you have to do is stay here in case something happens. My mother sighed a sigh that made me feel like a trouble. Some child disturbing her parents' perfect lives. Sarah, you need to learn how to prioritize. Motherhood isn't easy, I understand, but you can't call me every time there's a crisis. I already raised you. Now it's your turn. I bit my lips so hard it bled, feeling each of her words cut into the resilience I'd built up over the years. If you can't make it Friday, let it go. Anyway, Sunday evening, your dad and I want you and Noah over for dinner. I'm making your favorite beef stew. Let's not get upset over something small. Something small. My entire financial future, the only opportunity I'd gotten after 4 years of endurance and effort, was something small. I hung up, my hands trembling. Then I called everyone I knew, neighbors, close friends, even the parents of Noah's classmates. No one was free on Friday afternoon. No one close enough for me to feel safe leaving my sick son in their care. I called the office, leaving messages for my manager and HR, begging them to reschedule the interview to Monday, clearly explaining my situation. But Friday morning, I received a cold email from HR. Unfortunately, interview schedules cannot be changed due to recruitment timelines. We wish you luck in future opportunities. I collapsed onto the kitchen table. Noah was resting on the sofa, breathing more gently now, holding his old stuffed bear. But me? I couldn't breathe. My opportunity, the one I dreamed about for months, had slipped away because of 2 hours, because of one refusal. At exactly 4:00 p.m., my mom texted me, How did the interview go? Hope you managed it. I stared at the screen, an icy chill creeping up my spine. I didn't reply. I had never felt so alone and never felt so angry. On Sunday morning, while Noah was still engrossed in cartoons in the living room, I stood alone in the kitchen, gripping my phone. My mom's text from Friday was still there, unanswered. Every time I looked at the screen, my chest tightened. At first, it was pain, but now it was anger, resentment, the feeling that the whole world was determined to rip away every last effort I'd made. I dialed the number. Mom answered after 2 rings, her voice smooth as silk, as if nothing had happened. Sarah, finally you called back? I assumed the interview went well. I took a deep breath. The words came out of my throat like a hammer blow. I couldn't go to the interview, Mom. I missed the only chance I had to provide my son with a better life, just because no one could help me for exactly 2 hours. There was a brief silence. Then my mom spoke, slowly, calmly, as if reading off the party menu. You know, Sarah, I think you might be relying on me a bit too much. Being a single mother is hard, I know, but that's the path you chose. I stood motionless in the bright kitchen, yet everything inside felt dark. I clenched my jaw, forcing my voice to stay steady. You call that relying? I've asked you for help exactly once in the last 6 months. Who drove Dad 3 times a week for 2 months to physical therapy last year? Who spent hours fixing your phones, your smart TV, assembling furniture after your move? My mother laughed a dry, emotionless laugh. Those are things you should do. Families help each other, Sarah. Haven't your father and I always been there for you? I laughed bitterly, the sarcasm in my voice sharper than any blade. Been there for me? You mean like Noah's birthday last year when you missed it because you had a golf tournament in Maryland? Or 2 years ago when I asked you to watch Noah for exactly 3 hours so I could interview for that internship, and you told me you couldn't miss your cooking show? My mom's tone shifted. It wasn't soft anymore. You're insulting your parents, Sarah. We've done everything to raise you properly, given you a good education, and now you're blaming us because I didn't sacrifice one party? I gripped the phone tightly, trembling with anger. At this point, I couldn't hold back anymore. You never sacrifice anything. You only demand. While I'm struggling to carry everything alone, raising my son, counting every dollar to afford his medication, working overtime for a chance at promotion, you're vacationing, upgrading your sound system, buying new cars, and now you call me dependent? My mother didn't respond right away. Then she spoke quietly, like a breeze skimming over a lake, yet it struck me like thunder on a clear day. If it's such a burden, don't expect us to help anymore. But don't expect our financial support either. I froze. Financial support? Since when had I received financial support from them? The question burst from my mouth, low and rumbling like distant thunder. Financial support? Are you referring to Noah's $25 birthday gifts? Or that t-shirt you sent with the 70% discount tag still attached? My father's voice interjected in the background, deep and stern. Sarah, watch your tone. Your mother's right. Everything in your life is your own choice. We're not obligated to carry the consequences of your decisions. If you chose to be a single mother, you should be strong enough to handle everything yourself. I felt dizzy, leaning against the refrigerator. My palms turned ice cold. Then I said quietly yet firmly, emphasizing each word clearly, in that case, don't call me anymore when you need help scheduling doctor's appointments, fixing your computers, going to the bank, or moving furniture. I owe you nothing. Without waiting for a reply, I hung up. My face burned hot. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it would burst out of my chest. 30 seconds later, my phone vibrated. A text from my mother. If this is the path you choose, don't be surprised when we cut ties completely. Families are meant to support each other, not endure insults like that. I stared blankly at the screen, hollow inside. Then I deleted the message without replying. That day, I did something I should have done long ago. I blocked both of my parents' phone numbers. I thought after that last call, they would stay quiet, at least for a while. But just 3 days later, my mother returned with a completely new tactic. That evening, as I was preparing boxed mac and cheese for Noah, a luxury meal in our tight budget week, my phone buzzed with a message. I opened it, assuming it was Juliet, my neighbor who often asked if I needed anything from the supermarket. But it wasn't. It was a screenshot of a Capital One credit card statement showing a balance of $4.632 sent from my mother. No text, no greeting, just the number glaring at me from the screen like a stone hurled directly into my face. Before I could react, less than 5 minutes later, another message hit. We need your help paying this by Friday, or they'll raise our interest rate to 28%. Your dad and I are under serious stress. I put the phone down, my insides boiling. As I stirred the pot of macaroni, memories rushed back. Last Christmas, they called me in tears, claiming they had no money for Noah's gift, so I sent them $150. 2 weeks later, I saw their Facebook photos from a ski resort in Vermont. Last summer, they called me at work, claiming their car broke down unexpectedly, and I drained most of my savings to send them another $400. A month later, they proudly showed off their new kitchen sound system to my aunt. I used to think they were just thoughtless, but now I knew they calculated every penny, and I was their easiest emotional ATM. People respond. Instead, I silenced my phone, had dinner with Noah, and spent the evening listening to him excitedly talk about his school science project. Mom, guess what? I got picked to be Saturn because I can make cardboard rings around me. I smiled, nodded, but inside, my heart felt heavy as a rock. The next morning, as I waited for my coffee to brew, I checked my phone to see 5 missed calls from my dad and 1 voicemail. Call me back immediately. It's serious. The bank is getting involved. I returned his call during lunch break, just to end the silent torture. My dad picked up instantly. Sarah, there's a real issue with the house. They're saying they'll foreclose if we don't cover this month's payment. Can you advance us some money? Even just a couple thousand? We'll pay you back when we can, I frowned. You mean the house is getting foreclosed? Wasn't it fully paid off 5 years ago? Silence. Then he stammered, well, yes, but 3 years ago, your mom and I opened a EELOC to renovate the kitchen. Then had some other expenses come up. The bank's getting serious because we've only been paying interest, not the principal. So you're not actually at risk of losing the house. You're just behind on payments. Sarah, don't get caught up in semantics. We need help, I sighed. I can't help you anymore? Not this time. Not any time. I have Noah to think about, and after everything that's happened, I no longer trust you'll use the money as intended. I hung up before he could respond. Later that evening, I received an email from someone unexpected. My Aunt Clara, my mother's younger sister, whom I'd only met a handful of times during Thanksgiving. Sarah, your mother is heartbroken. I know you're going through a tough time, but family is supposed to lean on each other. Your mother said you've cut them off completely, even refused to let them stay when they lost their home. Is this true? She also mentioned you've disowned them as family. Sarah, what's going on? I froze. When had the story twisted so far that I'd become the ungrateful monster? I opened Facebook. Just a few swipes, and there it was. A post from my mom with a gloomy photo of their old house in shades of gray. Help 2 elderly people with nowhere to turn. Abandoned by our own daughter during our darkest hour. We just want to keep our last home. Below was a link to a GoFundMe page titled Save Our Only Home, from those who still believe in family. Goal, $85,000. Amount raised, $0. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. They weren't just lying to me. They were spinning an entire drama to manipulate friends, family, even strangers for money. Worst of all, they dragged my name into it as an invisible villain. I didn't comment, didn't share, didn't argue. I just took screenshots, saving everything in case I ever needed legal proof. I never imagined becoming the topic of family dinners not admired or pitied, but regarded with contempt and disappointed shakes of the head. After my mother posted the GoFundMe plea, I started receiving a flood of calls and messages from people. I spoke to less than 3 times a year. My Aunt Ruth was the first. "Sarah, have you lost your mind? I heard you refused to let your parents stay when they had nowhere else to go. Do you realize how old they are? 65, 65, 65. How could you be so heartless, Aunt Ruth? They're not homeless. They still have their house, car, credit cards, and they're making all of this up." Making it up? You dare say your mother is lying? She cried all night on the phone, saying her own daughter refused her, cold as a stranger. I started to respond, to explain, to provide proof, but stopped myself. Explaining to people who don't want to hear only drains me further. That same day, an old classmate I hadn't spoken to in 3 years suddenly texted me a long message. "I don't know what you're going through, but seeing your mom suffering like that really shook me. If there's something between you two, resolve it privately. Don't put them in this position." I didn't reply. I was too exhausted to defend myself in a story I hadn't started yet, was cast as the villain. Just as I was trying to preserve some peace for Noah and myself, my parents escalated things to a whole new level. Friday night, after bathing Noah and settling down to read him a bedtime story, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Looking through the peephole, I saw my parents standing at the door, each pulling a suitcase. I opened the door slightly, never taking my eyes off Noah in the living room. "What are you doing here?" My mother stared at me, her eyes tense and pleading. "The power's been cut off. We have nowhere else to go. You can't let us sleep in our car, right?" I swallowed hard. "Why didn't you call first? Why not go to Aunt Clara's? She has a spare room." My father interrupted, his voice low and strained. "You live alone with Noah. Surely there's space. We'll just stay a few days. Don't be so heartless." I stepped fully into the hallway, shutting the door behind me. "No! I've made myself clear before. This space belongs to me and Noah. You can't just show up uninvited and pressure me like this." My mother's eyes started to fill with tears. "You'd let your own parents wander the streets? How can you sleep at night knowing we have to sit in a cold car?" I clenched my fists. "You have money. You have options. This isn't wandering the streets. This is poor planning and now avoiding responsibility." I took out my phone, opening my contacts. "If you don't leave within 5 minutes, I'm calling the police. And this time I won't back down." They stared at me, stunned. My mother broke down, crying even louder. My father mumbled something under his breath, turned around, and pulled their suitcases away. I went back inside, locked all 3 locks, and sank down onto the floor. Noah looked up and asked, "Who was it, Mom?" I took a deep breath. "Someone delivered pizza to the wrong address, honey." The very next day, I did something I should have done long ago. I contacted an old acquaintance, a lawyer, and explained everything. He advised me to issue a legal cease and desist letter, requiring my parents not to approach my apartment or attempt contact with Noah without prior written permission. On Monday, I went straight to Noah's school to meet the principal and head of security. I explained the situation clearly and provided them with a copy of the letter. They immediately updated their system. Only Juliet, my trusted neighbor, and I were permitted to pick Noah up. Anyone else would be stopped and verified. I left the school feeling both relieved and bitter. Never had I imagined a day would come when I'd have to protect my son from his own grandparents. That evening, while hanging laundry, my phone buzzed again with a text. "Do you have no heart, Sarah? We raised you, cared for you, sacrificed so much, and now you threaten to call the police on your own parents? Someday you'll regret this when we're no longer around." I blocked both numbers. Ultimately, silence was also a form of resistance, and I needed silence just to breathe. 3 weeks after the night, my parents stood at my door with suitcases and accusatory eyes. I received a call that changed everything. "Hello, this is Douglas Keller from Sterling Logistics. We reviewed your resume and were impressed by your office management experience. Are you available for an interview this Wednesday?" I could hardly believe my ears. During the family crisis, I'd quietly submitted applications everywhere, not expecting much, just trying to preserve a shred of hope for myself. And now, here was a real invitation. I agreed, my heart pounding like I'd just run 3 miles. The interview took place in a bright office in downtown Greensburg, about a 25-minute drive from my apartment. Douglas, my direct supervisor, was a man in his 40s, calm, sincere, and without pretension or pressure. I know being a single mother isn't easy, Sarah. We have flexible work policies, especially for employees with young children. If your son gets sick, you can work from home. Just let us know. I was almost speechless. I wasn't used to receiving compassion from strangers. In that moment, I nearly broke down, not from sadness, but from the feeling of finally being seen. 2 days later, I received an official job offer. The salary was $8,000 higher than my previous position, with better benefits and, most importantly, the flexible hours I needed to care for Noah, especially during his asthma flare-ups. I resigned from my old office that same week. No one tried to keep me. I left the place that had suffocated me for 4 years, feeling as though a chain had been lifted from my neck. A few weeks later, I found a small 2-bedroom apartment in suburban Jeanette, located in a good school district, quiet and safe. Noah would finally have his own room. When I took him to see it, he jumped with excitement. "Mom, this room has a window facing a big tree. I can put my telescope here." I nodded, smiling. Inside, I felt a warmth I hadn't experienced in years. We moved in on a drizzly day in early June. Juliet, my kind neighbor, helped me pack and watched Noah for a few hours while I signed the lease. The new apartment was slightly older, with a few chipped paint spots, but for me, it represented a fresh start, no painful memories, no calls begging for money, no knocking at 10 p.m. Noah chose bed sheets decorated with planets, carefully arranged his toys on the shelves, and named his study corner the Space Command Station. With a serious voice, he declared, "Here, I'll study harder to become an astronaut one day." "Don't worry, Mom." I nodded, tears welling up not from sadness, but because, for the first time, the future didn't seem completely out of reach. Once settled, I decided to do something I'd hesitated over for years: begin therapy. My new company offered insurance coverage for mental health counseling, and I found a therapist named Dr. Lynn Carter, a woman in her 50s with a warm, deep voice and eyes that seemed to look right through me. During our first session, I sat on the sofa holding a glass of water, unable to speak for 5 minutes. Then I began to talk from Noah's premature birth to being abandoned by my boyfriend, to my mother's cold comments since childhood, each manipulative phone call, each accusation of selfishness because I tried to make it on my own. "Doctor," Carter never interrupted. When I stopped, she said, "Sarah, you grew up in a system of constant manipulation where love came with conditions and submission was disguised as family duty." I fell silent. Her words opened the lid of a jar I'd kept sealed for 3 decades. Every boundary you set was viewed as betrayal. Every no was twisted into ingratitude. That's not a loving family. It's covert control. I met her once a week. With each session, I felt another invisible rope, loosening ropes I hadn't even realized were binding me. I learned not to feel guilty for saying no. I learned to differentiate real love from manipulative affection. I learned to listen to myself instead of chasing approval from people who'd never truly acknowledged my worth. One evening, after Noah fell asleep, I sat alone on the balcony, looking out at the quiet courtyard. A cup of herbal tea sat on the table, and I felt an unusual peace, as though I just walked through a storm hair tangled, body drenched, but still intact. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was running away. I felt I was finally moving toward my own life. I was making breakfast for Noah when my phone rang. Seeing the caller's name, my heart skipped a beat. It was my dad. It had been over 2 months since I had last heard his voice the night he stood at my apartment door, suitcase in hand, bargaining with guilt and tears. I hesitated for a second, then answered, holding on to a familiar cold distance. "Hi, Sarah." His voice sounded deeper than I remembered, but without the authority it once carried. "Your mother started therapy." I remained silent, my knife still rhythmically slicing bread. He continued, "After everything, after you cut contact, your mom had a spike in blood pressure. The doctor said she had to manage stress and recommended counseling. At first, she resisted, but eventually she agreed. I didn't respond. Sensing my silence, he kept talking. She sees the therapist once a week. Nothing magical, but she's starting to realize things about the past, about you, about herself." His voice faltered slightly before adding, "Your mom told the therapist she used to think control was love. Now she's learning to recognize it as fear in disguise." For the first time in months, I felt something stir inside, not forgiveness, not warmth, just surprise. My mother, the woman who always believed she was right, who'd never once apologized, was now in therapy. "You might not believe it," my dad said, "and that's perfectly understandable. But your mother is changing slowly, maybe awkwardly, but genuinely." I sighed, interrupting him. "Did you call today just to tell me that?" "No," he answered. "I wanted to ask if we could start again, slowly, on your terms." I leaned against the counter, still holding the spoon. I used to mix pancake batter. I thought about all the sleepless nights, the trembling at every ring of the doorbell, the threatening, tearful, guilt-laden messages. And then I remembered something important. I was no longer the woman who nodded just to avoid disappointing someone. "Dad, if you and Mom are truly serious about changing, I'm open to giving this a chance, but only on my terms. No bargaining, no manipulation, no boundary crossing." I heard a relieved breath on the other end of the line. "I'm listening. From now on, we only communicate by email. No calls, no texts, no surprise visits, everything in writing. 2. Absolutely no requests for financial support, not indirectly, not implied, not hinted. I am not a bank. 3. No unsupervised contact with Noah, no picking him up, no outings, no overnight stays. If we do meet, it must be supervised and only with my explicit consent at least 1 week in advance. And 4, I paused, then slowly added, any sign of manipulation, victim playing, or blame shifting will immediately end all contact. No warnings, silence. Then my father softly replied, "I understand, and I agree. Thank you for not hanging up." I didn't respond. I ended the call simply, "Send an email if needed. Have a good day." 3 weeks later, I received my first email. No complaints, no drama, just a short note from my dad. "Your mother just finished her 4th therapy session. She asked if you'd allow us to send Noah some old pictures of you from childhood, only with your permission." I didn't reply immediately, but I opened the attachment, looking at my 10-year-old self smiling brightly in a lavender dress. My mom had sewn. For the first time, I didn't choke up when seeing my old memories. Instead, I felt how far I'd come. I continued therapy every week. Dr. Carter helped me see the dark corners I'd long avoided: guilt, the savior complex, fear of abandonment. "Sarah," she said one afternoon, after I mentioned my parents' call, "you don't need forgiveness to find peace. All you need is to uphold your boundaries because they are a declaration of self-respect." I nodded, and for the first time, I truly believed it. That evening, after Noah fell asleep, I sat alone on the balcony of our new apartment. The moon shone bright, softly illuminating my hands. I opened my laptop and wrote a brief email back to my father. "Thank you for keeping your word. You can share a few pictures with Noah. However, my boundaries remain unchanged. Progress depends on both sides respecting this." I hit send, no trembling, no worry, just a lightness, as if I'd finally released one last chain from around my neck. I don't know what the future holds, but I know one thing. I'm no longer living someone else's life. I'm living mine. My story isn't just about escaping my parents' manipulation. It's about learning how to set boundaries, stand my ground, and heal. I lost opportunities, cried, fell, But I also stood up and rebuilt life on my own terms. Now, I no longer live to please others. I live to protect my son and myself. Sometimes, the best thing you can do for your family is to stop letting them control you and start living your truth. What do you think of Sarah's story? Did she do the right thing by setting clear boundaries with her parents? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more real-life emotional family stories in upcoming videos.